Well, earlier I spoke to the Special Envoy to Combat Antisemitism Jillian Segal. I started by asking her about the increase of anti-Semitism in Australia since the October 7 attacks.
Well, I think the increase has been dramatic. We saw it immediately after October 7, and I think in those few weeks after October 7 we had about a 700% increase. And certainly since then till August, according to the Executive Council of Australian Jewry, who collect the statistics, we've had 1,800 incidents, which is about a 300 plus 400 300 to 400% increase in the previous period. And we know that those figures are understated, that not everyone reports things. So there's been a significant increase in actual incidents and in the feeling of the Jewish community, the way they're experiencing their everyday lives.
We'll get in a moment to the reaction, the war and what that has sort of generated in terms of passions. But even before Israel did react, in the day or two after October 7, there were comments made which were clearly anti-Semitic. Did this indicate there was, at least among some people, this underlying sentiment, or stronger than that, against Israel and Jewish people?
Absolutely. I mean, the Executive Council of Australian Jewry had seen an increase in the previous years, up 40%, I think, in the prior year. So we were talking about very fertile ground that had been prepared, and I think October 7 was just like the spark that lit all that anti-Semitism. It has been felt throughout the Jewish community, and as you say, it's hatred of Jews and, of course, of Israel, but it's principally hatred of Jews. But it doesn't stop with the Jews. We know it starts with the Jews, but it is actually an attack on our way of life, on Western democracy, and very dangerous, and that's why it must be resisted. Amongst the comments that were reported yesterday out in Lakemba and elsewhere, there was one cleric who spoke, who said not only about Jews and Israel, very critical things, but he said social cohesion, that is a dirty word. It's actually two words, but he said it's a dirty word. And I think that is a terrible reflection on where we are today, that the sentiment is not only about the Jews, but it's about the fabric of our society.
I'm interested in where you see the line in terms of what's crossing the line in the current very passionate debate around what's going on in the Gaza conflict and obviously now spreading to Lebanon. So there are people out there who say what's happening in Gaza amounts to genocide being carried out by the Israeli Defence Force. Now, without debating the merits of that, do you see holding that view as something legitimate in this debate, or do you see that as veering into anti-Semitic?
Well, I think that seeing Israel as exacting a genocide is anti-Semitic, because what we are seeing is Israel responding to the attacks from Hamas. No country cannot respond to that kind of terrorism. And indeed, Mark Butler, in speaking for the government and the Prime Minister yesterday at the vigil that was held in Sydney that I attended, said as much. He said, whilst we understand there needs to be some degree of proportionality in response, no country can stand that kind of attack. And not only was it the largest loss of Jewish life since the Holocaust, not only was it brutal and the most nasty in terms of parents seeing children dismembered and children seeing parents dismembered and rape and torture. But Hamas have explicitly said they would do it again, as we understand Hezbollah was preparing to do.
I want to ask you about this as well. This is something that's happened a lot in Australia, the phrase, the chant, from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. Clearly there are people and groups who chant this, meaning they don't want Israel or the Jewish people to exist. That's clearly happening. There are some protesters that say, well, we believe this means that Palestinians living between the Jordan River and the Mediterranean Sea will be free and not under any form of Israeli control. And they don't mean that Israel shouldn't exist. Is that second one a legitimate explanation?
I'm really not in a position to debate that. I think, as the Prime Minister has said, from the river to the sea reflects a sentiment that there should be no Israel, and that is anti-Semitic. And that is intimidatory, and that is full of hate, and that should cease. And I think we need to do something, as Mark Butler said yesterday at this vigil, which was very sombre, full of hope and prayer for peace, that these sentiments, these anti-Semitic sentiments, must be confronted, he said, must be called out and must stop.
There's also been a special envoy to combat Islamophobia appointed, Aftab Malik. Will you work together? Obviously, there's a lot of tension between the two groups. Would it serve you to work together to try to find as much common ground between the two groups as possible?
Of course. In fact, we are meeting this coming week to have a chat about what it is that we will do and can do together, separately and together. But I think we have a common aim to bring about greater social cohesion, to reduce the hatred, and to restore the Australian community to that strong multicultural community that welcomed all and that had opportunities for all and that made everyone and enabled everyone to feel safe and to be their best person, both in work and at home.
Do you think it shocked some Jewish people the extent of the backlash since October 7 on that matter, that they thought they were living in a society?
I think what happened post October 7 was a huge shock to the Jewish community. They did not expect it. And I think it's been a shock to Jewish communities all over the world, the extent of it and the virulence of it. And it's continued to shock different parts of the community. I mean, for example, the doxing of the Jewish creative group was shocking and has had severe repercussions for them. Many of them have lost work, lost friends, lost homes, lost businesses, and that was, completely unexpected. But it was wonderful to go to an evening on Sunday in Sydney where there was an evening of song where there were great Australian musicians playing songs of peace and hope for the future. And to see that celebration of Jewish creative people and musicians was wonderful and coming back to contribute to Australian society.